Hi everyone and welcome to the tutorial. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to add a crochet border to your knitting. There are lots of ways that we can finish off our knitted projects, and more often than not this is within the realms of knitting techniques and stitches, but sometimes we want to add a crochet border. They look really great and they're very easy to work. For this technique you're going to need your knitted project that's all finished or your swatch that you want to practice on, a crochet hook, some yarn, and of course scissors to be able to cut your yarn. The yarn I'm using for the border is the same weight of yarn as what I used for this swatch. So in this case I'm using a DK/8-ply yarn. The crochet hook is a size larger than the needle size I used to knit this swatch. And that's because my crochet tension is a lot tighter than my knitted tension. And really that's the trend with most people. And it's also just the nature of knitted fabrics that they tend to be stretchier and looser than crochet fabrics. So I'm going up a hook size to compensate for the difference in tension. You can choose your hook size according to what your individual tension is like. You might find that you're a very loose crocheter and you can get away with using the same hook size as what the needle size was for your knitting. Or you might find that you're a very tight crocheter and you actually need to go up several hook sizes to be able to match the tensions. You can just start working your border and then assess how your knitted fabric is sitting. If it's flaring, that sounds like your hook size is probably too big, and so you can just undo what you've done so far and then go down a hook size. If your fabric is puckering, that sounds like your hook size is too small, so just undo what you've done so far and then make sure to go up a hook size. Let's get started with our border. Alright, so I've got my knitted project, my yarn and my crochet hook. And I'm going to start by adding my border to a corner. It doesn't matter where you want to start your border, you can do it anywhere, but I find that if I do it at a corner, it really hides where the start was quite neatly. And if I start from here, it also means I can show you right away how we ease our crochet around a corner. So I take the hook, this was my bind off edge here of my knitted swatch, and I'm going to insert the hook through one of those bind off stitches, picking up both strands of the stitch. I'm then going to grab my yarn, wrap it around the crochet hook, and then draw the yarn through that knitted stitch which has secured the yarn to my knitting. I'm then going to create a small chain because I'm using a treble, what would be in UK terms, or double in USA terms, crochet stitch. I need to bring my hook up to the height of what the other treble stitches are, and because this is my first stitch I can do that through making a chain. So I've got this loop of yarn on the crochet hook. I then wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and draw it through that loop. That was on the crochet hook, so that's one chain there. Then again, wrap the yarn around the crochet hook and draw it through the loop. So that's two chain. And then wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and draw it through the loop again, and then that's three chain. And now I can actually start my crochet stitch. So before a treble for UK or WSA, I need to wrap my yarn around the crochet hook and then I insert it into the next stitch of my knitting. And this stitch is a little tight, so you do have to force it a bit. But once you've popped the hook through, you'll be able to get it back out again. Then wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and draw this loop through the knitted fabric. So I now have three loops on my crochet hook. Wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and bring it through two of those loops. There you go. And then we wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and again bring through two loops, like so. Now we're at the corner, so we're going to do that again, but we're going to do it 3 times into the same corner stitch. So wrap the yarn around the crochet hook and insert into the corner. Wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and draw a loop through. Wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and bring through two loops. Wrap the yarn around the crochet hook again and bring through two loops. And now inserting into the same spot, so wrap around the crochet hook, wrap around the crochet hook, bring it through, wrap around, bring it through two loops, wrap around, bring it through 2 loops, and there I've done 2 treble / double stitches into that same corner. One more, so wrap around, insert into the same spot, wrap around, bring through 2 loops, wrap around and bring through 2 loops. And there we've done 3 treble / double stitches into the one corner, and that eases the border around the corner. And now we're just going to go down the straight side. So just keep doing those treble stitches. Wrap around and wrap around through 2, wrap around through 2, wrap around and insert into the next stitch. So I'm just picking up each of these edge stitches, wrap around through 2, wrap around through 2. So hopefully you see it's super easy to do this. I just keep going into the next edge stitch, picking up both strands of it, wrap around through 2, wrap around through 2. I'll just do one more and then show you how this is looking. Wrap around through 2, wrap around through 2. There we go. So I'm just going to keep going along this edge, picking up each edge stitch for each crochet stitch that I'm working. I'll come to this corner and I'll once again work 3 crochet stitches into the one corner stitch. Then this was my cast on edge. I'm going to pick up each cast on stitch and work a crochet stitch into each of those. Come to the corner, work 3 crochet stitches into that. Come up this edge, working a crochet stitch into each edge stitch. Once again a corner, work 3 crochet stitches into that. And then I'll come along my bind off edge and I'll get to my starting point, and then I'll show you how to join the final treble / double stitch into this chain. I just wanted to mention quickly as I work it that you might notice how neat this edge is here in my garter stitch, and that's because I worked it as a slip stitch edging and it looked the same on the other side as well. So to do this, at the end of every right side row I slipped my final stitch knitwise with the yarn in back. Then at the start of my wrong side row I purled that stitch, and then at the end of my wrong side row I slipped the final stitch purlwise with the yarn in front, and at the start of the right side row I knit that stitch. And it's created this effect that looks a little bit like a chain with all these V stitches, and it's making it really easy to crochet into the edging because all I have to do is pick up that edge stitch, and it's so easy to work my crochet stitch into it. Now if you hadn't worked a slip stitch edging, you can still absolutely add a crochet border, but it's a little bit more of a guess where to insert your crochet hook into the fabric, so you just have to sort of be consistent where you poke it through, and the slip stitch edging just does make everything a little bit easier. I also wanted to mention that you can absolutely substitute out other crochet patterns for your border. So as I said a few times, I'm using a treble / double crochet stitch. You could use something that's shorter than this, you could use something that's taller than this, you could use something that's much more decorative than this as well. Basically what you need to do is, if it's a crochet stitch that would ask you, if you were working crochet, to insert your hook into each of the crochet stitches, that's the row below the one you're currently working, that you then just keep inserting your crochet hook into each edge stitch or knit stitch of the cast on and bind off. If it was something where it says to, let's say you were doing like a filigree sort of crochet where you actually create gaps, you then just have to skip the number of edge stitches or cast on / bind off stitches that it's asking you to skip as the equivalent of crochet stitches. So that might all sound really complicated if you're fairly new to crochet. So if you are, I'd recommend just sticking with something that's quite simple like this, where you just insert your crochet hook into each stitch along the edge and work each stitch as it comes. If you are more prolific as a crocheter, then absolutely go crazy and put in as decorative a border as you want. Okay, so I've completed my circuit around my piece of knitting. I am back at my starting point. So here is the chain that I worked first just here, and here is my final treble stitch. And you can see how my border looks. It's flaring just a little bit, but hopefully you can all see how much stretch there is left in this knitted fabric. So when I block this, I can definitely block it so that the tensions are matching each other and there won't be any flaring in the crochet border, and those edges are going to sit beautifully. And I've worked my 3 trebles into each corner, which has eased the border around those spots really nicely too. So the only thing I have left to do is to finish off and secure my work. And to do that, I'm going to insert my crochet hook into the top of the 3 chain. So make sure that the flat, smooth V side of the chain is facing you and it hasn't flipped around, so you've got the knotted and bumpy side. And the top chain is where my thumb fingernail is just here, because you can tell that the next stitch would be the top of the treble stitch. So we want to insert into the chain, and I take my crochet hook and I insert it directly through the middle, which will pick up a strand. I haven't wrapped my yarn around the hook at all. All I've got is my loop of yarn from the last treble, and now I've picked up a strand of yarn from the chain, and now I will wrap my yarn around the hook, and I draw the yarn through both of the first 2 loops that were on the needle. So it goes through that one and then that one, and I've just joined that really neatly. And that's totally done. All I have to do now is secure this yarn. So I'll pull the loop of yarn that's on the crochet hook wide, pull my yarn through it, and then pull that loop really tight to secure it, and then I'll just cut my yarn and weave in my tail. And that is how we crochet a border around a piece of knitting. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the tutorial, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions or comments, do leave them below.